The diner was almost empty that night, just the low hum of the coffee machine and the faint sound of rain tapping against the window. Ethan Parker sat at a corner booth with his 7-year-old daughter Lily, who was happily coloring in her notebook. It had been a long week for him, balancing work, parenthood, and grief. The loss of his wife 2 years ago had left a hollow ache that never quite went away. But tonight he was simply trying to give his daughter a small moment of joy. Pancakes for dinner. That was their little Friday night ritual. That was when he noticed the waitress. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, with tired eyes that told stories she wasn't ready to share. Her name tag read, Anna. At first glance, she seemed like any other waitress. Polite smile, soft voice. But something about her movements caught Ethan's attention. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee into his cup, and when he thanked her, she barely looked up. There was a nervousness in her eyes, a kind of quiet fear that didn't belong in a warm, small-town diner. "Are you all right?" Ethan asked softly, just out of concern. But before she could answer, the sound of the door chime cut through the silence. The air shifted. Anna froze. The color drained from her face as her eyes darted toward the door. A man in a dark jacket stepped inside, tall, broad, and heavy-footed, the kind of presence that seemed to darken a room without even trying. Anna's breathing quickened, and she stepped back, her tray shaking so hard a coffee cup slid off and shattered on the floor. She didn't even flinch at the noise. She was staring only at that man. Then almost inaudibly, she whispered to Ethan, "Please don't let him see me." Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Every small act of support helps stories like this one reach more hearts. Ethan didn't know what was happening, but something in Anna's eyes made him act instantly. He saw the panic, the raw fear. Without thinking, he leaned slightly to the side, motioning for her to crouch beside his booth. Lily looked up, confused, but Ethan gave her a small, reassuring smile. Anna crouched down behind him, trembling so much he could feel her shivers against the booth seat. The man scanned the diner with the slow, deliberate eyes of someone hunting for something, or someone. His jaw was clenched, his knuckles white as he gripped his leather gloves. He walked toward the counter, voice low and gruff as he spoke to the other waitress. "Looking for someone," he said. "Tall, brown hair, about this tall." He gestured roughly. "Name's Anna." "You seen her?" The older waitress shook her head nervously. "No, sir, can't say that I have." Ethan could feel Anna's breathing quicken behind him. He turned slightly, whispering so only she could hear. "You want me to help you get out the back?" She nodded weakly, tears forming in her eyes. Her lips trembled as she mouthed, "Please." Ethan quickly assessed the room. The man was distracted, arguing with the other waitress, so Ethan slid out of the booth, grabbed his daughter's hand, and whispered, "Stay right beside me, sweetheart." Lily didn't fully understand, but she could sense something serious was happening. Together, the three of them moved quietly toward the back exit behind the kitchen. They slipped outside into the alley, the rain still falling lightly. Anna's breathing was ragged, her eyes darting everywhere as though expecting him to appear from the shadows. Ethan gently placed his jacket over her shoulders. "You're safe for now," he said. "Who is he?" She hesitated, tears mixing with the rain. "My ex-husband," she whispered. "I left him 3 months ago. He used to hurt me. I've been hiding ever since. I just wanted to start over somewhere small. I thought he'd never find me here." Ethan felt a deep chill, not from the cold, but from the weight of her words. He had seen fear before, in the faces of people who had lost everything. But this was something different. This was survival. "I can't go home," she said, her voice breaking. "He'll be waiting." "He always finds me," Ethan's heart clenched. He looked down at Lily, who was watching the woman with innocent, sympathetic eyes. "Daddy, can we help her?" she asked softly. And that was all it took. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, sweetheart. We'll help her." They drove through the quiet streets, the sound of the windshield wipers filling the silence. Anna sat in the back seat, clutching Ethan's jacket around herself. She looked exhausted, her face pale and her eyes swollen from crying. Ethan didn't push her to talk. He just drove, to nowhere in particular, until he remembered an old cabin his late wife's parents had owned by the lake. It had been abandoned for years, but he still had the keys. When they arrived, Anna could barely stand. Lily carried her coloring book inside while Ethan lit the fireplace. Warmth slowly filled the small cabin, and for the first time that night, Anna's breathing began to slow. She looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "I know," he replied quietly, "but I couldn't just sit there and watch you fall apart." They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling softly. Anna finally began to talk. Not everything at once, but pieces of her story. Her name wasn't really Anna. It was Grace Mitchell. She had changed it when she fled from her husband Tyler, who had been controlling, violent, and unpredictable. She'd tried to get help, but he always found a way to track her. She'd worked small jobs under different names, never staying in one town too long. The diner had felt safe until tonight. Ethan listened quietly, his heart aching with empathy. He knew what loss felt like, what fear did to a person. He had lost his wife to cancer, and it had shattered his world. But this woman, she had lived every day with the kind of terror that left scars no one could see. Over the next few days, Ethan helped Grace contact a women's shelter 2 towns away. He arranged for her to stay there under police protection, but until things were sorted, she stayed with him and Lily at the cabin. Lily adored her almost instantly. Grace read her bedtime stories, helped her braid her hair, and smiled in ways Ethan hadn't seen her smile before. But the fear never fully left her eyes. One morning, Ethan went into town for groceries. When he returned, the cabin door was open. His heart sank. He rushed inside and found Grace sitting on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. The front window had been shattered, and a single note lay on the floor. "You can't hide forever." Ethan called the police immediately. Grace was too terrified to speak, so he held her hand, trying to steady her. That night, the sheriff assigned a patrol to watch the road, and Ethan sat awake by the fire thinking. He couldn't let Lily see this fear anymore, and he couldn't let Grace keep running. He needed to find a way to end it. The next day, Ethan went to the police with the information Grace had shared: Tyler's full name, his vehicle, and the threats she'd kept recorded on her phone. The officers took it seriously, and within 48 hours, they tracked him to a motel not far from town. He was arrested for harassment, domestic violence, and violating a restraining order Grace had filed months ago. When the news came, Grace broke down in tears. She cried for hours, not out of pain, but out of release. For the first time in years, she felt free. She turned to Ethan, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to thank you." He shook his head gently. "You don't have to. You just need to live again." For yourself in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a quiet understanding between 2 broken souls who had both lost something they loved and somehow found the strength to keep going. Months passed. Grace started a new job at a local school cafeteria. She rented a small apartment nearby, and Ethan often stopped by with Lily. What had started as an act of kindness slowly became something more, a friendship built on trust, courage, and healing. One afternoon, Lily asked innocently, "Daddy, is Miss Grace going to be part of our family now?" Ethan smiled, a little surprised, but deep down, he realized how much she already was. Grace had brought something back into their lives that had been missing since his wife passed: hope. As spring rolled around, the 3 of them took a walk by the lake near the old cabin. The water shimmered under the sunlight, and the world felt peaceful again. Grace looked at Ethan and said softly, "I never thought I'd feel safe again." He smiled gently. "You deserve to." She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "You didn't just save me that night. You gave me my life back." Ethan reached out and squeezed her hand. "Maybe you saved me too." They stood there in silence, watching the ripples spread across the lake, a quiet symbol of how pain could still give birth to something beautiful. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in healing, courage, and the power of kindness. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us how small acts of compassion can change lives. Before you go, comment below with one word: hope. because sometimes that's all someone needs to keep going.